Alright, this is Janine and I am here to talk about glow, which I have a Crix army that I painted, which is a great time to talk about glow because Crix are all about green, glowy awesomeness. So when you talk about glow, there's kind of a difference between glowing and having object source lighting, and you do them a little bit differently. With glow, you're really kind of trying to create a very bright kind of almost a sudden contrast between the very darks and the very lights. So if you look at kind of this ichor and stuff that are on these bases, they're not blended super smoothly in all of their parts, and that's because I really wanted it to seem like it was very bright. And if I blended it entirely smoothly, then there would be a really clean transition from the dark to the bright, and that doesn't read as glowy as well. Also, you'll notice that like these Crix, their base is black, and then the glowiness is contrasting that. I went through and I highlighted the Crix very simply with an airbrush, but it's also something you could do very easily with a dry brush. But I gave them a quick couple levels of highlight, and then I didn't highlight them anymore. There's no like really high highlight on the tops of their armor where there maybe normally would be, because I knew that I wanted the focus to kind of be on the glowiness. And if I spent so much time highlighting the black, then your eye wouldn't be able to focus on that glowiness. It would have too many things competing for your attention. For example, like here is one way I can show you the difference between kind of object source lighting and glowiness. If you look like on his leg, there's a little bit of source lighting from his sword. And that's really smooth and subtle, and it kind of, you can see the transition from the dark of the armor to the green versus the sword itself, where it's just kind of like in your eye, face, bold glowiness. Same with his the runes on his cloak. There's a little bit, I mean, the cloth is obviously green, so I couldn't put a lot of green undercoating on it, but it's definitely, the yellow is not blended, it's popping out. A fun technique I like to use with the texture of glowing, and you can see it on all of these little bases, is there's a lot of little dot work going on. I find that is a really kind of easy and effective way to create those very high highlights of the glowing effect. And I find that the texture and the way that it reads really works for me. So what I'll usually do is I'll start with a lower green, and then I'll highlight to kind of like a lime green, and then I will go through, and for the final highlight, I'll go in with a yellow, and I'll just do those dots. That tends to work for me. Another thing to keep in mind is, for example, when you're doing glowy on vents like this, you can't put the bright parts in the entire vent. You really want to focus on putting your bright colors where in your mind the source of the engine or power source or whatever really is. So for me it was the back middle, and that's where all of my glowing is kind of leading up to. So this part is definitely darker than this part, and that's where my highest highlight's going to be, is up there. I don't want my highlight to be over the entire section. I want it to be focused in one point, because that's where it's going to be hottest in theory. Like if there's a engine there, that's where the engine's going to be glowing. For glowiness, you want to pick colors that contrast really well. In this army and in other Cric's armies, it's usually going to be like black and green, but you can use complementary colors. You can do red and green. You can do purple and yellow. You can also use like cold and light colors. You can use like a bluer shade for your base color, and then a warmer shade for your glow color. Also, another thing that I would like to point out about glowing versus, like, for example, painting a gem, is that even though your highlights, like your highest highlights, are very kind of sudden and poppy, you want your lowest base coat to kind of bleed over onto the other parts. That way it's very similar to object source lighting, where you want the green to kind of overlap onto the other bits of what's surrounding it. So I will give a quick painting demonstration to kind of see if I can give a visual to what I'm saying, and yeah. All right, let's demonstrate this green glowing effect. So I've got a Eldar Shadow Spectre here, and we're going to do some glow on these vents right here, and a little bit on the back too. Usually I would do this step kind of after everything's been highlighted, but for the purpose of this video, this has just been given a simple dry brush, so we kind of got a nice blank canvas to work with, and you can really see how this works out. So the colors I'm going to use, these are all Vallejo model colors. We've got black green, deep green, lime green, and sun yellow, or lemon yellow. I like lemon yellow for glowiness versus some of the other yellows, because this is very bright, and it's actually a little bit more translucent than some of the other yellows, which works very well for glowiness. It doesn't work well when you're trying to paint something yellow, but it works well for glowy. All right, so first step is black green. We're going to use a very wet brush, and we're going to kind of put this everywhere. And we want it to have a little bit of overlap over the areas to kind of give that source lighting. Then we'll go in and we'll do this vent back here. This does not have to be super clean, because when you're done, your eye is not going to really notice this deepest green. It's kind of, your eye's just not going to focus on it because it's going to have so much more to pay attention to. All right, the next step is deep green. And while this is kind of wet, you can do it while it's dry, but when it's wet, it makes it very easy to kind of blend these two together. This step, I want to be a little bit cleaner. And again on the back, and kind of keep it a little bit more selective of where I put the color versus just kind of putting it everywhere. So for this glowingness, I'm going to have the highest highlight actually be right here. And if you'll notice, the deep green is very much in this recess. I'm going to try and have the highlight to be just underneath the recess, so that the lowest low light is right next to the highest highlight, and that's really going to make a very visual break for your eye to see, and it's going to make it really pop. It's going to make it pop, guys. All right, the next step is lime green. If I can get it to come out of the bottle. Ooh, a little bit too much, that's okay. All right, so you'll notice that the lime green and the deep green are very different colors. Usually what I end up having to do is blend them a little bit, but again, you don't want to blend them too much because you do want to create kind of a sudden transition. So, put the lime green up here. I don't want to go all the way to the bottom with the lime green because my glowiness is going to be towards the top. Green and kind of clean up the transition a little bit. Let's do the same with this other vent. Glowiness is kind of something you have to fiddle with until it looks right. There's definitely lots of different ways it could look right. There's lots of different ways that something can glow. So you just kind of got to play with it back and forth, making the colors blend and not blend and until it looks right to you. Also, you notice like I'm doing all of this with a wet brush versus a dry brush. I find glowiness is a little bit easier to do with a wet brush. Sometimes I'll do my my base colors with a dry brush and I'll dry brush the area and then I'll go in and kind of use more of a wet brush to do the final lime green and yellow highlights. But with a wet brush it's a little bit easier to blend and make the colors a little bit smoother, but again, you don't want them too smooth. I guess what I'm saying is it allows me to be, if I use a wet brush, I can be a little bit messy, and then the wetness of the paint does the little bit of blending I need it to. All right. So we got the lime green, and we're going to go in with this lemon yellow. This is a step for your detail brush, but this brush that I'm using happens to have a fine enough point at the moment because I haven't ruined it yet that I can use it as a detail brush for the moment. And I'm going to go in and kind of paint a line right above the screen. And I'm going to try and do it without covering the camera, but see how successful I am. I do not want to blend this lemon yellow. I kind of want it to be a very stark line over the top of the lime green. All right, to this other vent. bring down this inside corner a little bit because that seems to look right to me. Okay, and then do yellow back here. All right, and then looking at this now, I want to, just visually I can see that I want to kind of go back in with this lime green and bring the lime green down a little bit more. Like I said, sometimes this is just something you gotta play around with until it looks right to you. Okay, so this is the deep green. I'm going to kind of create a little bit of a blend here with the deep green and the lime green. Go right here. So lime green is a little bit too bright, but I need something. There we go, that's better. Lime green. All right, and there you go. Look at it, you've got a nice glowy vent. I'm going to go in and actually do a little bit more highlighting under this lip. So it kind of has a little bit of a, more of a source lighting effect right there. And there's your glowiness.